I just reread the last
All right.
chapter
Well, good
so many times.
evening,
It's just
everybody. Good
beautiful the
evening.
way it ends. Like
So
main
good to
character
see you
loving his big
all.
brother. It's so cool.
Many of you I know, many of you I do not know. I'm sure that's probably true of each of you as well. Um, Welcome to Divine Mercy Parish. This is our summer book club. It's a long-standing tradition. We've been doing this now for many, many summers. I've been doing it for the last two. This will be my third. I will have a team of other teachers, co-teachers, up here next week. We'll start filing in. It's funny they couldn't come tonight. Literally all of them could not come, which is fine. So we're gonna have some introductory time tonight. I'll speak to the theme that we've chosen, the books that we've chosen, why we've chosen them, a little context and sort of guidance for how to engage those books, and the topic of utopia and dystopia. Anybody a fan of dystopian novels? I mean, I feel like it's just, they're so rich, they're so interesting. Yeah, I think we're fascinated by them for very good reason. We'll talk more about some of the history of that. And I'll just give you guys a moment to introduce yourselves to one another and to the room. But part of what this whole literature and Catholic imagination series is, this is the second time we're talking about that explicit theme of literature and Catholic imagination. But part of it is motivated by, or largely it's motivated by, just asking the question, what does it mean how do we as Catholics, if you're Catholic, if you're not Catholic, but obviously you're at a Catholic parish hall right now, but how do we as Catholics read literature, and how do we write literature? As for the writing of literature, last summer we read Flannery O'Connor and we read The Hobbit from J.R.R. Tolkien. Both of those authors were Catholic. This summer we're reading all non-Catholic authors. One is an agnostic, Lois Lowry, she's still alive. One is one is passed, and who was a baptized, I believe, but lapsed Catholic, Cormac McCarthy. And then the third is C.S. Lewis, who was a high church Anglican, who I'd like to believe would probably have been Catholic in this day and age. But anyway, so those were our three authors. We'll say a bit more about them in due course. But part of what we're doing for this summer series is sort of asking the question, how is it that we as Catholics engage literature, whether they're written by Catholics or not? How do we think about the worlds that are represented in literature? How do we think about our own worldview and how that influences the way we interpret these books, these other worlds, the way we enter these other worlds? How is it that we can winsomely engage with literature, no matter who's written it and from where, right? No matter what worldview it comes from. Fundamentally, one of the convictions that I believe a Catholic has, and this is borne out in the tradition, this is borne out in your catechism, is that the Catholic is a big C Catholic and a small c Catholic. The big C Catholic, of course, is like we're Christians of a Catholic sort, that is to say universal. The word Catholic means according to the whole. So we recognize that there's the whole faith once for all delivered to all the saints, and there is that faith which has been believed at all times and all places by all persons who are Christian. But also there's a second kind of small c Catholic sense, which is more general and generous, which is to say we have Catholic tastes, right? When we can read, there is good literature that is not written by Catholics. There is sometimes better literature that is not written by Catholics, right? Just because one is a Catholic doesn't mean that you've been imbued with all the gifts of like the human ingenuity, right? The human genius or something. So part of what Catholicity means is taking a broad, expansive view and say that let's gather up, because I think this is what God likes to do, gather up everything that is true, good, and beautiful, no matter where it's found. And let's just like hone in on that and really focus in on that. And then as we do that, as we engage, of course, with this literature, whatever's not true or not good and not beautiful, if our tastes are refined by that, we will just immediately recognize it, right? We'll immediately recognize, oh, that's not beautiful. And you may not have the words for it, but you have the intuition. And so this literature that we're going to encounter is we're going to see beautiful things. We're going to see awful things, which, as I mentioned last summer, by the way, the Bible does not shy away from pretty awful things. There's some pretty terrible stories. Tent spokes being driven through heads, she-bears basically destroying children, eating children, well, not children, boys, but they're probably more adolescents to teenagers who are beyond the age of reason. Holy wars, there's all sorts of interesting things in the Bible that God seemed to see it fit to give it to us and not to filter it and to give it a PG rating. So, which is not to say we should just read any old thing, right? We have to exercise discernment, and every one of us is going to have a different disposition on that regard. So, as we think about Catholicity, we'll think about it in those terms too. So that's just a little shameless plug at the beginning. And now I'll be quiet, and I'd just love for you all to get to know each other at your tables. Just maybe give your name, where you come from, and like one fun fact about yourself. And we'll do that for like a minute or two, and then we'll kind of come out and just share our names. And I'll have a question for us.
Kind of needed some introductions, but Thomas, Madison, about a year, originally from Iowa. I'm a civil engineer. Cedar Rapids area?
Okay. I have a friend who lives around, like doing computer science stuff.
Okay,
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah. Went to undergrad here on American Medical School. Originally from Green Bay, Wisconsin. Is that everything? With fun fact? Is that what you're saying?
Sure.
Fun fact. I've been training for half Marathon. That's nice. I'm Alyssa. I've been here for almost 3 years. My fun fact. I am on track to read 101 books this year.
Wow.
One more than last year. This helps. It's nice and short.
Impressive.
Yeah, my name's Paul. I'm a coordinator for the Cardiology Fellowship program at UW-Madison. And I've been coming here about 4 years. And interesting fact is nothing really spectacular. Hiking at Devil's Lake.
I'm Austin. I've been here about a year. I'm currently at Epic. And what else? Fun fact about me, I gotta leave in like 20 minutes. We'll go with
Where are you
that.
going?
My friend invited me to trivia night, so I gotta show up.
What do you do at Epic?
Like internal IT, so IT for the IT. Data center stuff. It's really fun. Yeah, it's different. No. I would say it's interesting. I'm just like locked in, so yeah.
So, Alyssa, 101 books this year. That's like what you read through nowadays.
It includes audiobooks because I'm a cheater.
Okay. I mean, I feel like,
I count it, and it's a hot take.
I don't know that that's a particularly hot take.
You'd be surprised. It is. Yeah.
I mean, I have a little
I
brother.
think if you only do audiobooks, it doesn't count. But if you do both, then you can.
Okay. I don't know if I agree with that.
That's all right.
That's cool.
That's the hot take.
I tried audiobooks and I can't do it because like I just like space out. I don't know.
Yeah.
I need to be like locked in on the paper book,
Sure.
But teach their own.
I do feel like it's a different experience. I do like the sitting down with the physical book. That being said, I have an older brother who's he's really dyslexic, and so just like he will not sit down and read a book. Like that's just not pleasant for him. So he reads books by listening to audio. You know.
I feel like that's an extenuating circumstance.
I don't know. What do they say? Everyone's a little dyslexic. It's just okay, that's still impressive.
Thanks.
Should we do an AI question?
What do you have in mind?
I get real confused unless you guys are on the same page as me about it. It's not a good way to start.
Alyssa does have some strong opinions.
He's been at the sharp end of that one.
What do you think about AI, Paul? Any
Well,
hot takes?
I actually use it a lot with my line of work. So, how about engineers? Do you guys use it a lot too?
Yeah, and it's if you use it.
Oh, Epic. I'm sorry.
Of course.
I shouldn't make any AI jokes. Yeah, you guys are like centerpiece.
Yeah, if you use it improperly, you become really stupid. But if you use it right, I think that it is a useful tool. But they're very pro AI there, so just gotta live with
It's
it.
not related to AI.
Okay, everybody. Let's just maybe go around and give our names, where we come from, and yeah, just that'd be a great place just to start. Can we start this table up here? Just names of where you come from, and maybe just one little quick fun fact about yourself.
My name is Molly. I'm from Verona, and my fun fact is I grew up on a what? Hobby.
Yeah, so we'll have to speak up because it's actually, let's pass the mic around.
My name is Molly. I'm from Verona, and my fun fact is I grew up on a hobby farm.
I'm Jonathan. I'm from Washington State, and my fun fact was that I grew up on an orchard, cherry and apple orchard.
Oh, that's nice.
I am Liliana. I am from Colombia, and Maurice, that's his fun. I am from Colombia. I just speak Spanish. I'm Mary, and I'm Richard from Fond du Lac, and I guess my fun fact is that I had twins.
My name is Rachel. I am from Pittsburgh, but I was born in Lakota, Indiana, population 4,500.
My name is Trisha, and I'm in Pittsburgh now. And fun fact is that I was born in Los Alamos, New Mexico. Summer City.
Wow.
My name is Suzanne. I grew up in a not real exotic place, Jefferson, Wisconsin, but we think it's exotic. And my fun fact is I was just telling them I became a great grandma on December 25th.
All right.
I was 25.
Congratulations.
That's nothing to do with me, really, but all I can think of.
Yes. Yeah.
Nice stuff.
What does he say in the book?
I'm Nancy Fredericks. I live in Madison, and my fun fact is I was raised in Ellsworth, Wisconsin, home of the cheese curds.
Really?
I'm Tony, and I live in Middleton. And the fun fact, I'll share it with Nancy. Nancy and I are going on July 4th to celebrate 250 years. We're flying to Portland, Maine, and going up to Bar Harbor, taking a schooner, and all that good stuff.
Bahaba. Yeah.
Kathy Schneider from Verona, and I grew up on a dairy farm just about 5 miles from here in Pittsburgh.
Nice.
Yeah, my name is Paul Westerman, and I'm from Middleton. But an interesting fact is I was born in Chicago, Illinois.
I'm Austin. I'm living in West Madison, and fun fact, I'm from Ohio. I love Ohio. IO.
I'm Thomas. I'm originally from Iowa, and I don't know how exceptional or unique this is in Catholic circles, but my fun fact is I'm one of 8 kids.
Nice.
One of 8 kids.
I'm Brooke. I'm from Green Bay, Wisconsin, and my fun fact is I'm a Cubs fan despite being born and raised.
Ah, yeah.
My dad's from Chicago.
Ah.
I'm Armani. I'm from Boston, Boston, and my fun fact is I was born in Nepal.
Nice.
I'm Ryan. I was born in Chicago, Illinois, and my fun fact is I used to be in a rock band until kids came and destroyed our rock future.
My name's Debbie. I'm from
5 people that are born and bred in Madison.
My name is Paul Wagner. I'm from Portland, Oregon, and I've visited all 50 states.
My name is Douglas Wagner, and I was born in Madison, Wisconsin, and I'm the oldest of 5 kids.
Hello, Karen Siegel, originally from Chicago, one of them, so only beat by one. And it wasn't me, it was my parents, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So that's fun, but now Madison, so been here for 3 years, love it.
My name is Caroline. I live in Fitchburg, Wisconsin. I've lived there for about 10 years. I came here from the New York City area. I'm originally from the Boston area. I'm here in Boston, a couple of other places. And fun fact, actually it is fun. I'm working on a master's degree in religious studies from Missouri State University in Pittsburgh, where I've been once.
Okay, all right.
I'm Jan Tinginetti, and I grew up in Connecticut, 48 miles from Manhattan. You take the train at the bottom of the street right in the city. And then I lived in Boston for 3 years at Beacon Street in Mass Ave, so right Boston, right across from Charles. and then I moved to Wisconsin to study history. Met my husband in the hair business, and I was 74.
I'm Audrey Klinkle. I'm from Nebraska, but I've been living here for 25 years, so I guess I'm from here. Fun fact is I once walked the entire length of Westtown Mall with a pair of underwear on my head.
Nice. That wins. That wins.
I'm Erica Ortega, and I live southwest corner of Lincoln. And fun fact is I am a twin. I have a twin brother, and we've been asked like a dozen times where I tend to go. We are not.
My name is Mary. I've been in Madison for a long time. I grew up in Iowa on a dairy farm. So, it's a little Wisconsin.
It's a theme.
My name is also Molly. We found each other. I am originally from Johnstown, Pennsylvania, and I once paid my rent by being an extra in a Johnny Depp movie.
That's
I got
pretty
to
cool.
stand beside him because that made him look tall.
Ah.
My name is Leah. I live on the west side, but I'm from Canada, Wisconsin. And fun fact is I've been to Portland.
My name is Paul. I live in Wisconsin, and Madison, Wisconsin, and I just moved here. My fun fact is I just moved here from Atlanta.
My name is Tristan. I just moved here a year ago to Madison from Minnesota, but originally from Ohio. Okay. My fun fact is, this ties in, I met Walter Hooper about 11 years ago. He was like the student of C.S. Lewis and the curator, and I asked him one question. I said, if Lewis was still alive today, would he be Catholic? Or would he be Anglican? He said, oh no, Tristan, he'd be Catholic, which was 7 years before I converted to the Catholic.
Yeah. I met Walter Hooper as well. Yeah, he's great. Yeah.
I'm Tierney. I'm in Fitchburg now, and my fun fact is I'm the second oldest of 17 children.
That is. I know we missed you guys.
I'm Gabe. I'm from Iowa, and my fun fact is I am the second of 5 kids.
Hi, my name's Marquis. I now live in Verona, but I'm from Ohio, about like 40 minutes south of Cleveland. And my fun fact is I know how to juggle.
All right.
Hi, I'm Alyssa. I lived in Madison for 3 years, and my fun fact is that I read 100 books last year.
That's amazing. Monsignor, do you want to introduce yourself? Okay. All right. Well, I need to get a battery for this thing. It's dying now. All your fun facts have run it dry. All right. So before it dies, I'll just ask you this question as we begin. If you have this handout, this one-page handout, You'll see I have a number of introductory questions. We'll start with the first one at your tables. When you hear the phrase, the end of the world, what does that mean to you? What ideas, images, or possible circumstances does it conjure up in you? So that's the first question. Take it away.
Swimming in like small groups. Is that the thought? I thought of Chicken Little. Like the sky is falling, but like death. But like worse. Yeah. Something like that. That's probably what I'm thinking. Like the end of the world in my mind is very like negative connotation. I feel like it makes me think about the Book of Eli. Is that Will Smith? I haven't watched that movie in forever.
I'm not familiar, no.
I think it's Will Smith, and it's like the end of the world, but like he's trying to like recreate the Bible, but I just have like scenes of this movie. Just, like,
What movie?
Book of Eli. But also Mad Max. Kind of the same type of vibe. Actually, not at all. It's just like very like desert, broken down houses and stuff. Reminds me of New Mexico. I'm from New Mexico. And that's your end of the world. Yeah, that's why I'm here.
Yeah, I just imagine nuclear holocaust or something like that. Just fire everywhere. That's about it.
A lot of rocks.
Yeah.
Not a lot of green.
I think of something that's kind of like, I don't know, associated with time, like the end of time. Possibly like, not just necessarily like desolation, but just that's where time ceases.
I think, yeah, for myself, I also kind of feel that, like, end of time, like, Christ coming on the clouds of heaven sort of thing. Something we were just kind of, like, reflecting on as we were talking here that I think is interesting is, I think...
All right.
You were the one who said, like,
so those first questions, how'd that go?
But, like, what about, like, he's talking, like, you know...
When you hear the phrase, the end of the world, what does that conjure up in you? Just volunteer.
Right.
Just throw that out there.
It's negative necessarily.
Anything? Positive associations? Yeah, Paul.
So, I think one of the what strikes me about it is I saw a lot of zombie movies.
Okay,
and they
as one does, yes.
Apocalyptic kind of movies.
Yeah.
And so those are the images that come of whether it be The Walking Dead. It's like this kind of barrenness and kind of people searching for meaning, of course, running away from zombies. Luckily, that's done. So that's what that's the image that comes to me. And then since I've read and seen the movie The Road, that kind of has a parallel kind of image for me. But Tierney, she brought up at the very end this idea that because of the meta crisis that's going on, that it is in our psyches all the time with the, you know, what's AI going to do to us? What's the destruction of the natural resources going to do to us? What's the next virus going around going to do to us? That it is kind of like, even if we don't realize it, I think it is in the back of our minds all the time.
Yeah.
Lately.
Totally. Great. Any other thoughts?
Well, I was telling them that a priest taught us one day not to worry about the end of the world. The end of the world will be for each of us when we die. That's it.
That's fair. Yeah, it's very personal. Yeah. I mean, from a Christian point of view, of course, you know, Jesus himself teaches, do not worry about the end. I mean, you can't even tell the day or the hour, you know. So why try to? I mean, there are many Christians in all sorts of traditions, including our own Catholic tradition, of course, that will take great pains to try to, like, you know, divine, you know, the end, if you will. There may be some good motivations there, but there may also be some misguided and poor motivations as well. Yeah, totally. Yeah, Debbie. The end of the world means the beginning of another. Yeah, yeah. When the Lord closes the door, he always opens a window. Yeah. Fräulein Maria. Yeah.
For me, the end of the world would be that there is no more people alive.
Yeah.
When like extinction.
Yeah.
Because if there is people, there is hope. It doesn't matter if there are difficulties. There is hope, and they can figure out a way to resolve the problems and find a solution.
Totally. That's a great thought. Is it Lillian?
Yeah.
Ileana. Oh, Liliana. Liliana said that for her, the end of the world means where there's no people, and then there's a snuffing out of hope, right? Because otherwise we would be working towards some sort of solutions. Is that correct? Yeah. That's you're reading in advance. You're getting ahead of me here. It's good. It's good. Yeah. No, it's a joke. It's a joke. Yeah. Thanks, Mohammed. Yeah, Tristan.
I tend to think about either like a complete breakdown of civilization and just like chaos, or the
Yeah.
opposite, which is like complete oppression of civilization, where it's like overlords and these kind of things.
Totally. Yeah, that word civilization, that's interesting, right? What does that even mean? Right? What does civilization mean? Who gets to decide what that means? Is it something organic? Is it something from the heavens? You know? Is it something politically programmed? Oh, I'm sorry, programmed. Good. Yeah. Other thoughts? Yeah. Jan. Yeah. A more expressly Christian vision of the resurrection, right? Yeah. Totally. Yeah. No, I'm not correcting you. Just yeah, throwing up at it. Audrey, did you have your hand up? Totally. Yeah, that comes home to me. Debbie asked me, I went on a trip to the UK, to Ireland and Scotland for 2 weeks recently, and one of the things I've been wanting to visit for a long time, is Newgrange. Has anyone heard of Newgrange? It's a megalithic structure. It's older than the pyramids. It was built in 3200 BC in Ireland, and it's remarkable. It's this portal tomb, and it doesn't leak. It's held up for 5,000 years. But yeah, it's like this gateway, to this afterlife, remarkable. Look it up sometime, Newgrange, amazing. Okay, second question. What particular questions, worries, or concerns do you have about how Christians in particular have believed and acted in light of their understanding of the end of the world? Maybe we'll just sort of jump into that, just sort of dry, if you will, without speaking of it. This might be more native to so many of us, but any concerns you have about how Christians have understood the end of the world, or tried to make sense of that, or tried to use that idea? If that makes some sense. Yeah. That's all right. I guess, yeah, you said it's coming sooner than you think? Okay, Yeah. Okay, sure. So, sure. Yeah, so part one kernel of what I think you said that especially relates to the question, I think, is it would be easy sometimes for Christians, because they think they're saved, to just rest on their laurels and to think, well, I'm a Christian, I'm saved. I know that's not exactly what you said, but you suggested something to that end, potentially, I thought I heard. But anyway, Jesus himself teaches when or John the Baptist teaches, when the Pharisees come, there's an equivalence here, right? When the Pharisees come for baptism or to investigate what John's doing in the River Jordan, he says to the Pharisees, don't presume to say to yourselves, we are sons of Abraham, right? In other words, we're the elect people of God, right? Don't presume, right? All the Israelites in the Old Testament, so many of them, they had to be corrected by the prophets, but they just presumed, oh, we're fine. The end of the world, the end of the nations are going to come, but we're going to be fine. We've got the temple. It's so great. And, Jeremiah said, you can't, just because you have the temple, that doesn't mean anything. God will destroy the temple. So, other thoughts on how this question is asking, like, how do Christians sometimes have concerning ideas about the end of the world, or like troublesome ideas about the end of the world? Yeah, Paul.
So I once went to a church I belonged to, and I lived in Houlton, New York. There's a small little church there.
Yeah.
And the meeting that we had was about Book of Revelations, and they were interpreting like, oh, the red. There was something about the color red, and like, oh, this is a
it's Russia.
And they were kind of making these predictions.
Yeah.
All I could think of was, I think you mentioned it, it's like, Jesus says we're not going to know.
Yeah.
And they were I felt like they were trying to indoctrinate me. I felt like they were being a little bit arrogant. I think we need more humility. But that's when you talk about being concerned. I remember sitting there, I was like, you guys got to read more of the Bible where it says have some humility and recognize that we don't know what's coming.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's the big thing that concerned me. And I've seen it a few times in the past on television, but the time I was there, it really stopped.
Totally. Yeah, there are traditions in the larger Christian world that would, this is largely an American phenomenon, that would like to interpret the Bible with a newspaper side by side, and they would like to see the locusts as Apache helicopters, and the sort of literalist interpretation, or the red, dragon or whatever is like China or Russia, and so on. There's the Book of Revelation. We'll talk about a little bit tonight. Jonathan, yeah.
Yeah, one aspect of this question, I was thinking more about this evangelizing. I think I've just seen in circles I've run in that I think we tend to be like, oh my gosh, like Christ will come tomorrow, like I need to save all my friends. But I think we kind of get blinded by that, and we get like the means by which God gives no salvation. So like, I'm gonna become that person's friend solely because I want them to like become Christian. So like they don't really invest in it. They're like, oh,
totally.
Like, I've met friends like they'll become friends with somebody. They don't like go to church with them, and then they'll just stop being a friend.
Yep.
Like, well, it's not worth my time anymore.
Yep.
We gotta go. And
Totally.
I think we're like lacking in actually, like I said, like we forget the way God actually brings people to salvation.
Totally. Yeah.
Now.
Yeah. That raises a good implication. Are people of worth? Do people have value and worth or dignity by only because of their potential for conversion? No matter what your ideas of conversion are, right? Or is there something actually that is a precursor to that? Because if we're just seeing people like, oh, that's a potential convert, right? And that's the only lens we see them through, right? Then we've forgotten something primordial, something that precedes their potential for conversion, right? So that's a great point. Yeah, Tierney?
I think coming out of a similar tradition, it's like kind of apocalyptic, or at least being adjacent to some of them. Yeah, it might motivate like immediate evangelism, but it seems to like lead to passivity in most other things, like building long term, because it's like, well, it's imminent. Like we're only here for a few short years. So let's not build anything, or he's coming back, and so I think it can lead to a real futility and passivity when it comes to looking at culture in the future.
Totally. Or weird bunkers. Or it could build weird bunkers. Yeah. Tierney?
I have questions and now concerns about coming from a different Christian background before entering the church.
Yeah.
You see a lot of overlap in the politics and theology.
Totally.
A particular understanding of theology and
Yeah.
view of the end of the world. That, at least in my denomination, there's a push towards getting involved in geopolitics and trying to help bring about what you believe the end of the world is going to be.
Yep. Yeah, Pat Robertson, was it Walvoord? Those folks. Yeah, Liliana.
I understand the end of the world like increasing the evil activity of maybe really bad things happen,
Mm-hmm.
then I would be worried about the persecution.
Oh, sure.
That is something that the book is avoiding, not suffering.
Yeah.
That would be my concern.
Yeah. Worries of persecution and the like are certainly anybody's concern. I mean, Christians of all people of all religious and non-religious, for example. That's an interesting point for sure. There's a psychological weight. Yeah. Please do. Yeah.
There's a wonderful book out there called Discipleship on the Edge by a man named Daryl Johnson. He's not Catholic. He's a strong Christian. And his whole, he's taught on Revelation for 25, 30 years in college. And he wrote this book. And his whole thrust is, don't worry about all the imagery. I mean, he goes into what some of it might mean, but he doesn't ever pin that down. The important thing is, as Christians, what we need to be doing is discipling.
Sure.
You said something about, we don't just try to bring people in and then drop them. We walk along beside them.
Sure.
And so that's, as Christians, no matter how the world ends or what it's going to be, we need to be discipleship oriented.
Totally. Yeah, I think we're going to talk a bit about that a little bit later tonight for sure. So the last two questions we'll take as a piece, right? How do you understand the meaning of utopia and dystopia, and what, if anything, do you think is the value of imagining and or reading about utopian or dystopian literature? So maybe take a moment to think about that. By the way, just to be really clear, there's no right or wrong answer in terms of like, this is just priming the pump. And, one of the things I always like to do in the context of larger teaching context is just to name, like, everyone's got an imposter syndrome. I have it, you have it, we've all got it. If I mention like Plato later, you might go like, oh, like Plato, I haven't read Plato, like, nor have I. I haven't read all of Plato. I've read some of Plato, So I haven't read all of Cormac McCarthy or all of C.S. Lewis or all of Lois Lowry. So anyway, just to be clear, like, notice that, and just, we're all, it's a good and safe space to just name what you don't know. Yeah. Anyway, utopia and dystopia. What, if anything, do you think is of value in imagining and or reading this kind of literature?
Well, and then we made this connection on number 4, where we see some of it planned, right? So that it's almost kind of prophetic. I just read that when everybody.
Based on where we are right now, it's halfway through. It's not that easy. I haven't finished it. I get like halfway through. It seems okay.
Utopian is an evolution of a society. So I didn't see either of them as end of the world. So I was like, yeah, they don't go together.
What's that?
Utopia, dystopia, and end of the world. They're totally separate in my mind.
Well, that's why I have an and.
And then think,
Yeah.
well, how would we get there? Like there's a disruption. There could be that's the evolution. Like we know that the end of the world isn't now. It could be the next second, but it's not now. So the end of the world is a distance from us. And by what processes are we going to get there? Well, the processes going to have to do with how we understand now, and also with, like, are things going to get better? Are they going to get worse? So you can have it at a perspective, ideas, and
those like the like
The little
Oompa
Loompas.
Loompas. Yeah.
By the way, I was only joking. I was. Oh yeah. I joke a lot.
Yes,
It's a fault of mine. Yeah. Translate for me, yeah. Because this man I joke with him all the time. Yeah. All right. Yeah. What are your thoughts? How do you understand utopia and dystopia? Utopia first. How do you make sense of that? How would you define that? Don't be bashful,
We have
though.
a hard time coming up with utopian books.
Okay.
That just because like we're
Sure.
fascinated with everything going wrong.
Wrong.
Maybe, and so
Yeah.
If you're just writing about perfection,
Yeah.
probably we lose interest. Or I don't know.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it, that when I was even thinking about the books to choose for this particular summer book club, I was thinking, well, what utopian literature is there? You know, and The Giver, I do think, is trying to present a utopia, of course, but one big question might be like, does every utopia become a dystopia? Right? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Whoa, we've got some praise hands in the back. Romani.
At least, or their stories start with trying to create a utopia, unless there's, some of the books of like, nuclear fallout and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
That's a bummer.
Might not be, but a lot of things where you see genetic engineering,
Brave New World. Yep.
That falls into dystopia. The Giver, even if you look at Hunger Games,
Yep.
most people in the Hunger Games were having a terrible time.
Yep.
Capital was trying to create a utopia for itself.
Yep. Yeah, great. Yeah, Jen?
I was just thinking, my mom
Yeah.
19th century utopia turned very distant.
Sure.
So I think of Margaret Fuller and
Sure.
Hawthorne and all those great 19th century
Yeah.
folks. And they start out with great ideas of
Yeah.
a lot of things, but they never work. Branch Davidian compound, Jonestown are extreme examples. And I'm sure there's plenty of other little really things.
Yeah.
That started out with great intentions, but
Sure.
things go wrong.
That's a great point, just to like bring it down to earth, right? Like in history, people have tried to create utopian communities, right? Yeah, 100%. And that raises the question: how are these utopian communities different from, say, republics or democratic government? Like, we're going to celebrate our 250th anniversary. I took that to mean the nation, not you guys being friends. Yeah. But where I grew up outside of Pittsburgh, we had the Economy Village, we had Harmony. They were like Owenites. Like Robert Owen was this Scottish, utopist. Was trying to, but it was also, by the way, right around this industrial revolutionary turn. There was a lot of interesting things happening. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And there are many examples of this product that
Totally. Absolutely. Yeah, something about human beings. Yeah, we'll talk about that. Yeah, no, it's a great point. You can ask the question too. Again, I don't want to presume that everybody here is Christian or Catholic or at all. But when it comes to religion, when religionists of all sorts, shapes and sizes and colors and the like, try to create communities, like when we talk about, for example, the kingdom of God, when Jesus talked, the kingdom of God is among you, right? Or the kingdom of God is coming, or Acts chapter 2, they had all things in common. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching, the breaking of bread and the prayers, and they had all things in common, right? This sounds like a social network, a kind of quasi-utopian community of sorts. And so, yeah, so what are the checks and balances to keep us from going wild and wonky? Yeah, totally. Other thoughts? Yeah, it's Caroline, right? Yep.
things to say about utopias too.
Absolutely, sure.
Envisioning utopia, the literary utopia.
Yeah.
Where it's kind of it's a thought experiment. Like, what do you really think the best state of human beings is? And then
Yeah.
we're inevitably going to find human beings being who we are. It's not really going to work, but it
Yeah.
can help discover our values and help us focus on what's good in what we already have.
Totally.
And dystopia, part of what's interesting about dystopia, given the choice, would I rather watch a movie about utopia, just like books, would I rather watch a movie about utopia or a movie about dystopia? Oh, I take dystopia. I mean,
For sure. For sure.
but I think we learn things about dystopias too, but there's an imbalance. Like saying, yeah, utopia, that's a good thing to think about.
Yeah.
Dystopia, well, that's just exciting.
Totally. Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think what you said at the beginning there about sort of utopian novels help us understand, or like thinking about utopia, dreaming about utopia, help us identify like what are our values, why are we doing this, our motivations, like what are we trying to fix, whatever it is. It reveals, it shows our cards, if you will, our sort of worldview cards. So yeah, we're gonna get into that too, for sure. Well, let's get into it now, shall we? If we want to take a quick break, get a coffee or something, by all means. We're gonna transition to some other stuff. But if you want to stand up,
It seems like all politicians, they're always like pushing towards utopian principles. I think they're stopping.
That is their stock and trade, and they've got us do something, and I don't think they really believe it.
But it's all a lie.
Yeah.
They know it's not possible.
I didn't realize. It's good. Good to be fit.
And then there's I have t-shirts. Did you wear it? I got one online. Those boys. I'm telling you that right now. Did your kids read those books? My children? No. Did your kids read it?
I'm sure they read it this. Yeah.
Oh, did. Well, that's something.
Well, they did. Yeah, that's pretty good. But I agree with college.
All right, let's maybe gather again.
I loved it.
Drew loved it too.
By the way, if at any point during our time together and you're like, I need to stand up or something, I need to take a lap, don't worry, just do it. That's why we have this circle here. So just to take a lap, yeah, or to take a nap. But if you just want to, move around or whatever, one of the things I did for this book club this summer is I extended the time a little bit. I noticed the last summer, especially especially when we had a great lineup of speakers. We all wanted more time, so we did make more time. Actually, we went to a local pub after hours. So just to make a shameless plug for that, after every one of our sessions, unless something prevents us from doing so, if you're interested in gathering for further conversation at Vintage Brewing Company down here on Whitney Way, it's about like 5 minutes from here maybe, as the crow flies. We're going to meet there for Literature on Tap. We're calling it Literature on Tap. So right when this is done, we'll throw stuff in the dishwasher and skedaddle, as they say. Okay, so a few things. So as I said, this opening session is going to be kind of introductory, and then we're going to move into The Giver, the first 12 chapters of The Giver. If you didn't make it to the first 12 chapters this time, don't worry. It's a quick read, and you'll make it through. So you're probably not going to be able to read the fine print there, but it's in your handout, the handout with the staple. So feel free to take that out. I'm going to use this as reference. By the way, just one of my teaching styles is I like to give stuff to take home. And you can read it when you get home. You can revisit it if you want. And it's a medium to take notes. So I think what I would argue is that there's never a time when humanity hasn't been concerned about something related to the end of the world, right? Or put differently, about making the world better, right? So there's this utopian and sort of dystopian impulse or recognition that we carry with us. And this goes like way back, right? And we'll look at some examples of this. But I want to kind of bring it home. Some of you already alluded to this, to AI, right? Obviously, we all know about AI, right? We're thinking about AI. It's sort of in the air and the water. It's sort of like Galadriel saying, like, the world has changed. I can feel it in the air. I can hear it in the water and so forth. There's a little chart I made a screenshot here. I decided to go on Google and just do a search, latest quotes from AI giants on the dangers of AI. And then I thought to myself, I didn't intend to write giants with any kind of meaning, but I was like, why did I use the word giants? And then I was thinking about like the Bible, like there were giants in the earth in those days, right? The Nephilim. Are these like technological Nephilim, of our time? Anyway, you can see here just some of this is the first little paragraph. AI industry leaders increasingly warn that recursive self-improvement, rogue agents, and massive power concentration pose severe civilizational risks. Top executives have quantified these dangers and stressed the need for strict guardrails, highlighting the tension between rapid innovation and humanity's safety. The CEO of Anthropic, one of them at least, is Dario Armodi. Humanity is about to be handed almost unimaginable power, and it is deeply unclear whether we possess the maturity to wield it. Right? I'm thinking of like Uncle Ben, with great power comes great responsibility, right? But that word maturity is an interesting word, right? I think he is also on the record apparently of saying, I think there's a 25% chance things go really, really badly. It's like, wow, that's not, insignificant. We are considerably closer to real danger in 2026 than we were in 2023. The unintended consequences of AI models that do not adhere to stringent safety standards pose a threat to public safety. Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, said AI will probably most likely lead to the end of the world, but in the meantime, there'll be great companies created. That's like, okay. That's great, I guess. I don't know. I guess it's a capitalist's dream. Meanwhile, they probably have the money to make the kinds of bunkers to survive the end of the world, so. On the existential threat, a misaligned superintelligent AGI could cause grievous harm to the world. An autocratic regime with a decisive superintelligence could do that too. Mitigating the risk of extinction, that was the word, right, earlier spoken, from AI should be a global priority alongside other societal scale risks such as pandemics and nuclear war, right? Think back to like if you're old enough to have lived through the Cold War, the nuclear bomb, and the Kennedy presidency and so forth, all of the language and the rhetoric around that time, right? Dennis Hassabis of Google DeepMind, in an interview on the scale of AI societal transformation, it's going to be 10 times bigger than the Industrial Revolution and maybe 10 times faster. That's like frightening, right? That's crazy. By the way, Catholic social teaching, which obviously has like roots and seeds all the way back to like the Old New Testaments and forward, but one of the modern understanding of Catholic social teaching emerges as a response largely to the Industrial Revolution, right? And so the way Catholics think about morality, ethics, ecology, the social good, the common good, all these things are largely, as is often the case in the history of the church, a response to something bad, right? How do we respond to this? How do we bring clarity and charity? I just so happened to see the live feed of Elon Musk on the day that the initial offerings were made for SpaceX going public. By the way, I'm fascinated by SpaceX. Like when I see those rockets go up and then come down with like the little chopsticks, I'm like, what is happening? It's like, wow, it's like crazy. Like, it's like The Martian and Interstellar. It's real, which I think are great movies. But Elon Musk said, look, we're probably going to fail, but we should give it a try, because if there's not a new company that enters space, we will never be a truly space-faring civilization. The other aerospace companies, they build good rockets and everything. They were simply not pursuing the technology that's necessary to make life multi-planetary, to make Star Trek, to make the exciting science futures that we've read about real. And that's what SpaceX is all about, is to take the fiction out of science fiction and create an exciting, inspiring future for everyone. We want to be able to take anyone who wants to go to the moon, anyone who wants to go to Mars, or anywhere in the solar system, and maybe beyond the solar system at some point. We want to be able to take you there. Not just a few astronauts, he said. I mean, literally, you. If you watch, whoever you are watching this, SpaceX wants to be able to take you to the moon, take you to Mars, and ultimately beyond. And I'm confident at this point that with the incredible team that we have here, that we will do that for you, right? He said that on June 12th, right, of this month. So, by the way, this is what C.S. Lewis's space trilogy is kind of about, right? His so-called Ransom trilogy. We're reading one of those on our book club. So I'm going to try to transition this slide here. Maybe. It's all right. That's all right. We'll get to it. Anyway, so these kinds of things, the AI, the question of space travel, they elicit really, really big questions, right? The ultimate kinds of questions, and they go back to like your middle school literature class, like the who, what, when, where, why, and how kind of questions. But it asks the question like, well, if these things, I mean, if we're going to achieve space travel, how are we going to do this? Of course, we're already seeing how we're going to do it, but it raises questions about the means, technology, right? It raises questions about the manner in which we're going to achieve this through the use of natural resources, through the use of human power and intelligence and all the rest. But also raises like, who's doing this, and who are the figures? What are their interests? And how do these figures relate to those who may have questions or concerns about doing such things, right? Are these powerful figures? What about those who are less powerful, who do not possess the trillions of dollars literally to do these kinds of these technological advances? And ultimately, the big question, and the most important, is why, right? What's the ultimate purpose? What's the ultimate motive, right, for doing this? This is tapping into what we call ethics, right? And the metaphysical questions, like, what's the good of this? Is it good? Should we have caution, as some of our, AI entrepreneurs are telling us, this is a summer series, Literature and Catholic Imagination, and as it relates to Catholic imagination, I already mentioned the Catholic social teaching, but how timely, isn't it, that Pope Leo XIV just released Magnificat Humanitas, his first encyclical document. The title is Magnificent Humanity, on Safeguarding the Human Person in the Time of Artificial Intelligence. And by the way, that couldn't have been better planned. I did not know that he was going to write that. I don't have like a direct line, but like how perfect, right? He obviously, we knew he took the name Leo for good reason, probably echoing back to Leo XIII, who was one of those the fundamental framers of Catholic social teaching in that industrial revolutionary time. But he says this. This is a paragraph at the very beginning of the document, which I have not read the document yet. I've had no time to read the document, but I will, and I hope that we all will at some point. And we're going to talk about how you can, if you want to, in just a minute. So let's see what he says here. In the era of artificial intelligence, when human dignity is threatened by new forms of dehumanization, ours is the pressing duty to remain profoundly human. We must lovingly safeguard the grandeur of humanity, bestowed upon us and revealed in its fullness in Christ, the splendor of which no machine can ever replace. True progress always stems from a heart open to others, an intelligence willing to listen, and a will that seeks what unites rather than what separates. I address this heartfelt appeal to all the Catholic faithful, to all Christians, and to all men and women of goodwill. Let us not be afraid to get our hands dirty on the construction site of our time. Like Nehemiah, the builder of the walls of Israel when they came back from exile, right? Ezra and Nehemiah were the great rebuilders. And by the way, in his encyclical, he frames two sort of opposing visions from the scriptures to illustrate kind of a building project, Nehemiah and the Tower of Babel. So he says, like Nehemiah, let us pray, plan wisely, and work preserving, placing God at the forefront of our actions and the human person at the center of our choices. Thus, the rejected stones, the poor, the sick, the migrants, and the least among us will become the cornerstone, and a solid, welcoming, common home will emerge on the earth, where love and faithfulness will finally meet, and righteousness and peace will embrace. This is the blessing we implore from God, and the task that stands before us is that of being builders of communion rather than architects of Babel. We are to be servants of the coming kingdom instead of lords of towers destined for ruin, which, by the way, this is like an allusion maybe to Saruman, right? Which he does cite Tolkien in his encyclical. I do know that, right? It's first time Tolkien's been cited in a papal encyclical. With the heart of a shepherd and a father, I ask everyone to abandon the construction of yet another Tower of Babel. Back in Genesis 12, if you want to read about the Tower of Babel. And to join forces in building up the common good so that humanity will never lose its beauty, and the world once again will come to recognize the human heart as the place where God desires to dwell. So Pope Leo is obviously writing this document. It's very timely, the focus being on the human person, the magnificence of the human person, as he said, the grandeur of the human person, the splendor of the human person. These are like beautiful words to describe who and what we are. And that's the other big question, like, what are we, right? We could talk about transhumanism. We have lots of people who are trying to live forever and avoid death, which is, of course, the last enemy to be destroyed is death, but under what means and by what cost? I just want to take a moment to plug Molly has a little bit of an announcement here about the encyclical.
So we, the SMG Young Adults, are going to host a discussion group on the encyclical just because it's interesting. So it's open to everyone. You don't have to be a young adult. We would like to have a diverse group of people of all ages and all, you know, if you know a lot about AI, if you use it or if you don't, if you're a skeptic or if you're a supporter or whatever, we'd love to have everyone there. It's going to be here. The first meeting is going to be Wednesday, July 15th from 7 to 8:30 p.m. So it's going to be similar to this format. Kind of like we're going to begin with a summary of one section of the encyclical. We're going to break it up into four meetings. So we're going to do a summary and then kind of provide discussion questions and break it into groups. So it's going to be pretty informal, and we're not going to assume that like you've read it because it's long and like it's interesting, but there's a lot in there. But yeah, like I don't know, this is important. Like these are important things. I think even if you feel like it doesn't have an impact on you, it probably is impacting you in some way. I really like the quote that Matthew shared, and I think just one other quote from the encyclical right in the beginning, talking about rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem. Pope Leo says, the narrative shows how the city is reborn not through the initiative of one man, but through the shared responsibility of all. Men, women, priests, artisans, heads of household, and young people all play a part. This is an undertaking with God at the center, which rebuilds relationships before rebuilding with stones. Thus, ancient Jerusalem rediscovers the common language, not one of uniformity, but one of communion, namely the harmony that arises when all persons assume their own role and recognize that their strength comes from the Lord. So I think we all have a role to play, whether it's you feel like it is showing up and talking about these things, or however you feel. But if you want to come, like I said, we'll be here. The first meeting Wednesday, July 15th at 7 p.m. And then we'll meet roughly. It's gonna be roughly every other week. So the next one will be July 29th, then August 5th, and then the last. August 5th, yeah, that'll be the last one. So yeah, but July 15th, 7 p.m. here, and yeah, it should be a good time.
Will there be announcements in the bulletin?
Yeah, I think there will be like in the emails that go out, the bulletin.
Great.
I think there'll be something on the screen here, and so yeah.
Perfect.
You can promote it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, sounds like Pope Leo's not a fan of sameness. If you remember that. So, okay, we'll keep going. Thank you so much for that. So, expressed in the archives of history, basically, is on page 2 now. But from Mesopotamia to the modern world, we've been very deeply concerned about the end of the world, right? We have tablets from like ancient Mesopotamia, from Assyria, from Babylon, that are talking about like maybe the end is coming. There's people always looking to the stars, right? Looking to the divine, if you will, to see the signs of the times. Or I think of the Magi who came and like noticed the star, who came to find Christ in his birth. And I think in every age, these have been expressed, these urges and these intuitions have been expressed on religious and scientific terms. And one of the things I wanted to stress here is that in the pre-modern world, in the ancient world, all the way up through, relatively recent history to early modern period, science and religion, or faith and science, and philosophy and all that were inseparable, right? You had natural philosophy, you had faith. So many of the great scientific breakthroughs and theorists were Christian, were Catholic. Think of like the Big Bang Theory. That was a Jesuit priest. Think of like Mendel, in genetics. He was a monk. Hildegard of Bingen, right? She was a physician and a naturopathic like doctor, and she knew all the virtues of herbs. Wisdom chapter 7, that kind of thing. So anyway, all these things. This was like we sort of started splitting these disciplines apart and these different sciences and ways of knowing and being apart, especially in the advent of the modern world. And I think what we're seeing now in a large way, in interesting ways, in science, a kind of recovery of mystery, right? In physics, especially, and other kinds of sciences, a recovery of mystery. I'm not a physicist, but the people who I know who geek out on that stuff, talking about like the God particle and relativity and all these different things that we've been pondering for some time, This is kind of returning to that mystery of the universe, as opposed to just sort of splicing things down to discernible, reductionistic parts, you know? That's scientism, not science. So, end of the world, what do we mean by that? I want to suggest to you two different understandings of the word end of the world. I have here St. Thomas More up on, I think I might have missed this slide or whatever, but yeah, anyway. St. Thomas More was the person who actually coined the phrase utopia. And he was a 16th century figure. He actually writes the novel Utopia in 1516. And that's super interesting, right? As a Catholic statesman and philosopher, we have him to thank for the genre. But we'll say more about that. Oops. Getting ahead of myself. Okay, so the way I want us to think about the end of the world is in two ways. I think this may get to some of the person's questions in the back that I was eavesdropping on. I have two images here to represent this. The first is the cosmic cataclysm, right? Here's a meteor destroying the Earth, you know, the dinosaurs kind of thing. So when we think about the end of the world, very often we think about zombies, maybe we think about meteors hitting the Earth, maybe we think about sort of biodiversity extinction, ecological collapse, right? Maybe we think about divine judgment, right? Those things, by the way, are not mutually exclusive. But that is certainly a way and an appropriate way to think about the end of the world, right? But I want to suggest that there's a second way to think about the end of the world, and I think it's related. And it has to do with it, and I use the David there, Michelangelo's David, as an example of this. By the way, look at the scale. That's a person apparently giving the David a massage. I don't know, but anyway, that's a massive sculpture, right? But you know, when you think about Michelangelo, when he saw the granite, you know, this is an analogy; it's probably overused, but when he saw the David in it, right, and then he chiseled away everything that wasn't the David, right? He wanted to bring that stone to life. He had a purpose for that stone. In fancy philosophical language, we call that a telos or a telos, right? It's the word in Greek that means an end or a purpose or a goal. So you can think of the end of the world, as like the end of the world, boom, big bang, like everything's destroyed, right? But you can also think of it as the purpose, the goal, the end for which it was made. And this is, I think, a really important feature of what I want to stress and what I want us to think about during this book study is like, how does that sense of the end of the world have something to bear upon our thinking about these topics, right? So as I write here, the goal and intention of everything in creation, from the planets in their courses to the peas in their pods, right? This is, everything has a telos, everything has a purpose, everything has a design, right, on this account. And by the way, that goes all the way back to Plato and Aristotle, right, who had some theological understanding, and other philosophers of their time, but some sense that there's a natural essence to what we are, right? Just like that David, right, Michelangelo saw a purpose for that stone, a goal for that, a final cause, right? And he brought his ingenuity and creativity to bear to make it. And so this other second sense of the end of the world is asking, well, what's the essence of the world and its creatures, including us? What's true? How do we live according to the truth of our nature, the goodness of our nature, right? The beauty of our nature. And so, again, in both cases, the question of how to interpret who we are, where we've come from, where we're going is taken up in all sorts of areas of study. So we have history, right, the human accounting of the past, philosophy, the search for meaning of life and how to live well, religion, humanity's response to God's self-revelation or disclosure, and also this innate sort of groping for the divine, right? An ultimate meaning and union with the divine. Science, as the means by which humanity comes to investigate the natural world through empirical observation and the testing of theories. We could add technology to that as well. The humanities, of course, encompasses all of this, right? Including literature. The human arts and sciences are dedicated to asking questions and exploring the boundaries of human flourishing. So all of this is sort of taken up in this idea of the end of the world. And I think that second definition is something that I think in our moment, and frankly for quite some time, we need to recover, right? This is where we talk about the natural law, right? That if there is some end for which I was made as a human being, then I should probably know what it means to be human, right? St. Irenaeus says famously, the glory of God is the human fully alive. What does it mean to be a fully alive human being? Because if we have a sense of what that looks like and means, it should guide our decisions about AI, about transhumanism. You know, is there any place for that? The boundaries of that? There's moral and ethical questions. So the word utopia, of course, it means no place. Quite literally, utopia. Utopos means no place. It's also, there's a pun there too, EU, like utopos, EU, can mean good place. Good place. So there's a kind of tension there, right? There is no such place as this utopia. But when we think about it, as Caroline was saying, right, we imagine it according to what we think is good, right? What we think will be good for us, good for people. A dystopia, on the other hand, is a bad place. Dys in Greek is bad, and topos is place. Think of a topographical map, right? Place. So a bad place is a dystopia. And what I like to think about is, as we dream of place, some good place we want to experience and bring to fruition, we also have this place for dreaming, this place for dream, right? We dream of places, but there's a place for our dreaming. And this is something that we might call hope, right? I think Liliana was hinting at this earlier, right? Why is it that human beings hope like we do, right? What is it about us that hopes in the way that we do? We could just as well say, what does it mean to despair, right? How is it that we despair? But all this suggests that, you know, when we write utopias and we write dystopias and we think about these things, that there's a longing and a desire for another world, be it a world on Earth or a world in some other world. It suggests that there's something potentially lacking or something wrong in our world, in ourselves, individually and collectively. And it may even suggest that we're actually looking and longing for a hope for healing, a hope for progress, a hope for healing and salvation, maybe from our suffering and from our despair. And so this is where, I hope you can see, this is how this plays into our conceptions of history, right? Like, think about all the different eras of history that you might be familiar with on just like a cursory thought, right? Like, think of those people in your life who tend towards interpreting history as like, it's all downhill, right? There was once a golden age and it's all downhill from there, right? Sort of the fancy word is a declensionist view of history, right? Like you're declining. But then you can think about history from a progressive view of history. Like, well, the ages before, they were like Neanderthals, right? They knew nothing, right? They were imbeciles compared to us, you know, and our ability to like map the human genome and so forth. And so there's this, we're getting better and better and better and better, right? We're progressing, we're advancing. So all these ideas of progress, regress, and so forth are all playing into like our understanding of the world and, you know, where we've come from, where we're going. Bishop Varden, do you guys know Bishop Varden, maybe, some of you? He's a bishop of Trondheim and in Europe, and he says this. He says the first things, the human spirit naturally longs for a salvation, able to remove at a stroke whatever causes pain, whatever inflicts wounds. The basic expectation of instantaneous relief is much the same whether our register of hope is digital, political, financial, pharmaceutical, metaphysical, or spiritual. But notice what he says, our register of hope. Put a different way, where do you see in yourself and in ourselves and in our culture trying to take our hope for escape from our suffering, assuaging of our suffering, healing of our suffering and our pain and our death? Where do we tend to go with that impulse? Right? I think that's kind of what he's putting his finger on here. And so all these big questions beg the question about what does it mean? How do we navigate this? And so the matter of wisdom is important, right? How do we think about wisdom? And I think from a Catholic point of view, we have many wisdom books in the Bible. And we have more wisdom books in the Bible than our Protestant brothers and sisters as well, which is interesting. These big questions of how, who, and why, and all the rest get answered in the wisdom tradition. Of course, other texts too. But I won't read this quote to you, this chunky quote there underneath that section, but basically it goes back to what Caroline was saying, right? When we think about utopia and dystopia, we're thinking about the authors and their vision of reality, and also their particular check, right? Their critique of reality, right? They're offering, in this respect, I'll just read this, the utopia is a critique of a dominant ideology, offering to its readers an imaginary or fictional solution to the social contradictions of our own time. So the big question we might ask is, like, every one of our authors, what kind of concerns do they have? Why are they writing this? Why are they writing this? Okay, very briefly, I already mentioned St. Thomas More as the founder of sort of the genre and the framer of the concept. But there are earlier precursors to this. Greek culture, I already mentioned Plato, don't be worried. He talks about, Hesiod and Plato, they talk about this kind of golden age. They have these sort of mythic stories of the creation of the world. In Plato's case, it's in the Timaeus. But Plato, in his famous Republic, any of you ever read parts of the Republic? Anyone ever read the allegory of the cave, the escape from the cave? It's one of the most rich educational texts ever. It's also, have you seen The Matrix? That's Plato's allegory of the cave. Has anyone ever seen Barbie? It's a great film. That's also Plato's allegory of the cave. So it's a really, really important feature, and I would argue that maybe there's some allegory of the cave in Lois Lowry as well. But in Plato's Republic, he's the earliest figure to name the kind of concept of imagining a city as a good city example and a bad city example, a utopia and a dystopia. Okay? The big question in Plato's Republic is, what is justice? And how do we build a society that is just? And by the way, Plato is really fun to read. He's extremely funny. It's kind of wild and crazy. You'll go to sleep reading Aristotle. Plato, you'll be like, whoa, this is really fun, right? C.S. Lewis said in his children's book, The Last Battle, he says, what are they teaching children these days? He's like, everything's in Plato. It's all in Plato. To children. So in that spirit, I have taken a selection from Plato's Republic. If children can do it, you can. If the kids at St. Ambrose Academy can read Plato, you can read Plato. We're not going to read it today, but I'll give it to you to take home. It's just a little selection. But here, you get a little taste of it. He says, I'll tell you, we say, don't we, that there is a justice and that there is the justice of a single man and also justice of a whole city? Certainly. And that a city is larger than a single man? It is larger. Perhaps then there is more justice in the larger thing, and it will be easier to learn what it is. So if you're willing, let's first find out what sort of thing justice is in the city, and afterwards look for it in the individual, observing the ways in which the smaller is similar to the larger. So the key to Plato in this Republic, if you want to know, is C.S. Lewis as the abolition of man. But basically, think of it this way. In every one of us as individuals, you have an intellect, a will, and passions, right? The thing that make you fat, like me. But you have an intellect that makes you think. right, that guides you. You have a will, the part of you that chooses to act, that chooses to fight, the irascible part. And you have passions, your base desires for like all these things. And then when this is inverted, when the passions lead, when your gut leads, right, your reason gets dumbed down and your will gets softened, and you can't be a human. And his point in the Republic is to say that happens in a large scale too. If the majority of the people of the city are living by their gut, by hedonism, right? By the way, your gut's good, right? It's good, but it has to be in order, an ordered love, if you will. So what he does in this little selection, he says, I'm going to paint a picture of a city. It's called the Callipolis. It's the beautiful city. And we're going to look at what that looks like. And one figure in the dialogue says, Socrates, it sounds like it's a city of pigs. It's like they're just eating like greens, you know. It's like this like super crunchy city. And then the other city is the city with a fever. The city with a fever is super sick. It's ill. So the dystopia is a city with a fever, and the Callipolis is the city that's utopian. So you can just pass these around. Okay. So read that on your own time. It's good. But the Greeks didn't, have everything. The Hebrews did too, right? And we could just as well say the Hebrews are actually older in their conceptions of these ideas. Think about the creation of the world according to Genesis. What did God create? The whole world, and then he created what? The Garden of Eden, right? This lost garden, this lost world of sorts, right? Eden in Genesis. But then immediately on the heels of that in the biblical text, we have this promise of a different world that's going to come. It's going to emerge out of the ashes, so to speak, like a phoenix, And so in the Hebrew Bible, what the Israelites had, what we call the Old Testament, we have a story that is looking back to a sort of lost world, which, by the way, I would argue is not a golden age. Not a golden age. That's important because that's an accusation made against a lot of Christians. Eden was not a golden age. It was the beginning of something pure and good that was supposed to grow, right? But this new world then is going to be born out of that by God's grace. And the prophets tell us about that, right? The prophets tell us about that. So we have Eden and we have Babel, the attempt to build that world on our own, right? We have Jerusalem, how God builds a city. And then we have a new Jerusalem, a new heavens and new earth that's yet to come. And so in the biblical understanding, the Hebrew and Christian Bible, we have very clear imagery of an old world, so to speak, and a new world. And the thing in between, right, is sort of the groping after, or the longing for the fulfillment of that. Actually, if you jump down to the last section there, Catholic cosmological and moral vision. Cosmological is a fancy word for cosmos, right? Catholic cosmos and moral vision, imagination, right? Memory, myth, and remembering. We all exist between the primordial or the original blessing of the world. That's how the Catholic Catechism talks about it. This primeval fall into sin, and then the subsequent groanings of creation, of humanity, and groping for restoration and for remembrance. Remembering an old world, but also remembering, quite literally remembering, putting it back together again, right? A new world. And for us as Christians, of course, we believe that God is doing that in Jesus Christ, in the incarnation, his death and resurrection, what we call the Paschal mystery. And in his church, right, which on the day of Pentecost was gathered into one, and that as we just celebrated Pentecost Sunday, did you ever notice, by the way, that the Feast of Pentecost is the restoration and the reversal of Babel? All the nations that were named in Genesis 12 are named in Acts chapter 2. And those nations are gathered in one place. And rather than the confusion of languages, there's now the understanding of languages. And the way God works is like, I will unite the human race on my terms, right? Not on the terms of technology. and so forth. You can read about St. Paul in Acts 17, about sort of, he's here in Athens at the center of the city, speaking to them about their ideas of God, their sacred monuments. Think about all of our utopias, our utopian visions. How much of those are sacred monuments? And so forth. So, here we are. Any thoughts on that? I want to move into the book itself next, but any thoughts on that? I know that was a longer introduction, but if you want to stand and... Okay, well, we'll just jump into the Giver. I want to read a selection. How many of you have an introduction to the Giver? I have his 20th anniversary. Listen to what, I don't know if you read introductions or prefaces. I like them because it's kind of nerdy, I guess. But it says this. Lois Lowry says, 20 years after The Giver was written, nothing prepared me for the reader's reactions. I had always received lots of letters from kids, frequently writing as a class assignment. One began, "This is a friendly letter." Over the years, of course, they have more often become emails. There's more still. But that didn't compare to the mail about The Giver. First of all, for the volume, the sheer number of them. Even now, 20 years later, this is 2013 she's writing, they still come, sometimes 50 or 60 in a day. But now the letter writers were different. Sure, many of them were still kids, but a startling number were much older. And the content was no longer the school assignment letter, the obligatory, "I thought this was a pretty good book." Instead, the letters were passionate. "This book has changed my life." Occasionally angry. "Jesus would be ashamed of you," one woman wrote. That's good, that's interesting. And sometimes startlingly personal. One couple wrote to me about their autistic selectively mute teenager who had recently spoken to them for the first time about The Giver, urging them to read it. A teacher from South Carolina wrote that the most disruptive, difficult student in her 8th grade class had called her at home on a no school day and begged her to read him the next chapter over the phone. A night watchman in an oil refinery wrote that he had happened on the book. It was lying on someone's desk while making his rounds. "I'm not a reader," he wrote, "but man, I'm glad I came to work tonight." A Trappist monk wrote to me and said he considered the book a sacred text. A man who had, as an adult, fled the cult in which he had been raised told me that his psychiatrist had recommended The Giver to him. Countless new parents have written to explain why their babies have been named Gabriel. A teacher in rural China sent me a photograph of beaming students holding up their copies of the book. Notice rural China. The FBI took an interest in the 200-page vaguely threatening letter sent by a man who insisted that he was actually The Giver and advised me not to go near the city where he lived. A teenage girl wrote that she had been considering suicide until she read The Giver. Wow. One young man wrote a proposal of marriage to his girlfriend inside the book and gave it to her. She said yes. But a woman told me in a letter that I was clearly a disturbed person and she hoped I would get some help. That's a lot of reaction from a variety of different persons and different responses. What do you think, based on what you've read of the book so far? Why do you get a sense of why those kinds of reactions are what they are? For those of you who've read that, how can you begin to account for the reader's response to that? Any thoughts on that? Yeah. Your name again? Erica. Yeah. 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 Very. Yeah. That's great. Other thoughts? Yeah, Hermione.
principles to know why you're uncomfortable, to justify why
Mm.
you're uncomfortable with the things that happen in the book. And so we have a lot of like changing of language, like what some words mean, or
Mm.
associations with certain words, or things like, well, it's not quite in the book yet, but euthanasia, that's clearly implied, at least in the start, where if you don't have a good sense of principles, you know, Catholic principles or whatever you
Totally.
do believe in, then you have to take a step back and be like, okay, I'm uncomfortable, but I can't say why this is wrong.
Right.
So that
Right.
it can cause a lot of like discomfort and anger.
Totally. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, to be released, right? What does that mean? You get this ominous sense, and yeah, without a clear sense of your principles, you may have an intuition. I think is what you're saying, that this is wrong. But like to know why, right? This is part of the reason why at the beginning I framed these big questions, like what does it mean to be human, right? How do we think about that? Where does dignity where was dignity lie? Where do we locate human dignity? What causes us to have human dignity? Why are we different than animals? You know, are babies any different than and older people any different from a hale, man or woman? Right, those kinds of questions. Yeah, any other thoughts? Yeah, John.
I feel like, yeah, kind of similar. It's like, I mean, most people are saying why they love the book, it just resonates with something. I never got why. I mean, probably because the people in this book, you watch them live their life, and you're like, that feels wrong. Like, they should know that's wrong, but they're kind of just doing what they're told. So maybe as a reader, maybe for myself, I'm like, oh, like, what am I doing?
Mm-hmm.
What are patterns that I've just been taught? That I'm
Yeah.
aware of? Like, wait, I can like say no to that. I can like redirect my life in a different direction.
Mm.
I just like just do things. And, like, if I was just like Jonas or whatever, like stop for a second.
Right.
What would I realize? Like these characters, like, I look at them, I'm like, bro, this is bad. You
Yeah.
know, and then what am I doing in similar?
Yeah.
Maybe people rather than that.
Totally. Yeah, and even like how quickly and easy it is for us just to get into groupthink, or just to think with the prevailing winds and tides of the culture, right? Totally. Yeah, Karen? Mhm. Yeah.
It was interesting because I was playing an audible in my car, and there was somebody in my car who was struggling with their faith.
Mm.
It was very interesting, their response to it.
To this book?
Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
And they started thinking about things like,
Totally.
well, and I don't want to read it for anybody who hasn't read it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Just concepts of it where they were like, wow, I never
Hmm.
that way before.
Totally.
So I think it's
Totally.
Alyssa's like what you're saying, like a response.
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, I have faith, and this is like affirming my faith or
Yeah.
lacking faith,
Yeah.
but it's making me think.
Totally.
But it was interesting you said she was agnostic.
Yeah, I know.
Because there's
Yeah.
some very deep
Yeah.
Christian
Yeah.
values in here that
Totally. Well, she was raised a Protestant. She was agnostic. She's still alive. She's like 89, I think. Yeah. Yeah. Certainly. Mhm. Sure. Totally. Totally. And her story's not done yet. Yeah. Brooke. Yeah.
I can kind of cut off what you were saying, but the kids who fell in love with this book.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Kind of what he was going off of earlier, like people who fell in love with this book, like we get to like kind of Jonas experiencing the world and like what we obviously take for granted, like snow.
Yeah.
And I'm just like reading his description of it. I'm like, wow, that's just like so beautiful.
Yeah.
It's kind of just like making me fall in love with the world again. So I just
Mm.
kind of think like that girl who's like, oh, I was considering suicide and now I'm not. Like she
Yeah.
probably was kind of also going through that sort of like doing the sameness and now it's kind of
Totally.
her eyes are open, I guess.
That's great. Yeah. Just to repeat some of that, she was saying that, Brooke was saying that falling in love with the world again through the descriptions, say, of snow, right? We just take things for granted, like snow and like the breeze, the smell of flowers, whatever it is, right? Color, yeah, absolutely. Because of sameness, right? Or it's like cats, you can cover their eyes when they're very young, kittens, and then they stop using the rods and cones and they just go blind, right? But how much can that happen to us in all sorts of ways? So yeah, I think the book opens up the gateway to asking these big questions, ultimately to come alive to the world as we see it, before us. Yeah.
it's like that the society is so restricted, and there are many rules, and everything is just well planned, and everybody knows what is going to happen.
Yeah.
And then reading this book, I start to limit what release means. But for me, will mean maybe it could be that they are going to be there, or maybe they are going to a real world where they can be enjoy, be create, something beautiful.
Yeah.
Outside that this society that is so restricted, and people doesn't know.
Yeah.
It's like they don't know their own bodies. They don't know the meaning of many things that they are using.
Yeah.
And maybe outside when they are released, they will enjoy something.
Yeah.
It's like there is a movie where there is this group of people that are living the perfect life, but they are use the organs for other people that is living outside. And then there is a movie, and when they win the lottery, they are going outside to this city, but what they are really doing is going outside to donate the organs for the person that is living outside there. It's like a clones.
Yeah.
And
Is it
example,
Otherworld
the
or?
person takes the liver, and then you win the lottery, but you are going to do liver and
Yeah.
liver to them.
Is that the Anthony Hopkins movie?
I don't know.
Yeah, I think
just
it.
remember
Yeah.
here. And the
Yeah.
real world is outside.
Yeah. Wow.
That's society.
Yeah. That's really interesting. Yeah, so there's a lot we don't know yet about where people are released to and all those sorts of things. So we'll definitely be exploring that. Other thoughts on sort of, well, let me move into this space. I mean, this kind of, we're already in the second question. How would you describe the world that Lowery has constructed? Based on your reading, what are some of the main themes or ideas in these first chapters? Sometimes I look for keywords or ideas or concepts to kind of guide me or like kind of put some anchor points down. But yeah, what stands out to you so far?
Gray.
Say it again.
Very gray world.
Gray world. Yeah. Lacking in color. Yeah, Paul. Sanitized. Yeah. Jen.
I think it relates to what you were saying about why it feels, especially young people, so all over the streets, and like sixth grade, but and one of the things is the young people. I say the young people are so different from the older people, with the exception of one or two probably. But you know, they're real, they're friendly, they're lively, they're sensitive, they're thoughtful, whereas all the adults in here are so wooden. I mean, it's one of those great novels where the parents suck. But the adults do. And so kids love that, you know. But the kids, you know, you're really thinking about it because they're trying to make sense of their world, and they have all these very precious, innocent characteristics.
Yeah.
That I think
Yeah, it's interesting that the relationship between children and adults and the adolescents and adults, the 6s and the 7s and the 8s and the 9s, and and certainly the 12s when they become adults. But yeah, there are these hints though of the some of the adults like breaking the rules. You know, like interesting. Well, that's a great question. Yeah. Well, they say thank you for your childhood. Yeah. Oh yeah, Audrey. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
what they do, how they do it, who does it, what they say. It's all controlled. And what's interesting is when you first start reading it, I don't get the sense anybody in their face they're in control. It's not. So this world presents very nicely initially, and it's only through the description of what Jonas sees and hears and kind of notice about the distinctions between what should be, what the rules are, and what people actually do or not. You start to see that, well, maybe it's not so perfect.
Yeah.
But it starts out as being,
Yeah.
even though they're really quite controlled.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, the thing they call it sameness, right? Sameness. And I think raising the matter of language is huge, I think, here. The emotions. We're going to talk about actually memory and language through all of our books. That is a through line. So definitely notice that. Memory, language, the function of language. As far back as Plato and certainly in the Bible and in the Christian tradition, the Catholic tradition, we are realists when it comes to language, philosophical realists. And by that, it means when we give names to things, it's because they have essence. Those names participate in the reality of that thing. And for us, language is not merely a social construction. Because if language is merely a social construction, the people in power get to decide. This is the great gift that Michel Foucault, the French philosopher, mid-20th century, gave to the West, among others, the deconstructionists, right? And there's all sorts of precursors to that. By the way, it's not to say he didn't say anything good. He did. But where we live now is language is a technology that we use to just patchwork ourselves, And so, in a certain sense, like Babel, language has been scattered, right? So language is a big theme. Memory is a big theme in all of our books. Huge. So that's really, really important. Let's talk about Jonas a little bit. How would you describe Jonas? There's so many, and by the way, let me just simply say, this first introductory session is what it is, an introductory session. We start a little bit later to get things settled. I'm introducing the theme, but we're gonna have a lot more. You'll see the next session study guide is just discussions. You'll have these guiding questions on the back of this for the next chapters, and then you'll have guiding questions for the next book. So we're going to have a lot more time dedicated to really getting into the text a bit more. So we can probably spend some time in the first part of the book. It's a short enough book, but let's talk about Jonas a little bit. So what do you make of Jonas? What do you make of Jonas? Yeah, Debbie. Yeah.
And yet you can sense in him that there's a blurring.
Yeah, some stirrings. Yeah. Yeah, I reread that. I was like, oh, she's talking about puberty and falling in love. I'm like, well, I guess that's a good word for it. Yeah.
I think Jonas is a really interesting character because at the start, in the first couple of chapters, he's completely okay with everything.
Right. Right.
So incredibly public.
Yeah.
Even like your dreams need to be told to your that was assigned to you. And he's fully taking part in all of the rituals of the universe. So that's that like detail orientedness of they cut their hair off at a certain age and stuff like that, right? Everything's a ritual.
Yes.
Completely on board with everything, and even now we're halfway through the book, but you can see some of those potentials of like something's not right. I'm feeling things, I'm developing things in myself.
Yeah.
Just don't comply with the world around me.
Yeah, that's great. Other thoughts? Yeah. Erica, right? Yeah.
I think this is going to go back a little to the last question. I saw if the whole world is very intentional.
Yeah.
Like when I read it the first time, I only saw the control and audience. I felt like now I see that like, oh, they had this kind of gift or reaction maybe to what they saw the world before, intentionality. And I think Jonas might even take that intentionality to the absolute deeper level in the way he tries to get in that. I think it's the opening scene of trying to
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
Like everyone can be trying to be intentional, but there's something a little more deeper.
Yeah. It's an interesting tension in the book too, because language is so precise, but when it serves sameness, that would seem to be like a bad thing, right? Like, oh, I can't, and then just the need for precision about to describe his emotional state, and so that would seem to be a good thing too, like, or to say, like, for example, the imaginary animals like rhinoceros or elephant, whatever, like the things that they thought were imaginary but they're real. I mean, this is like totally back in Plato. This is in Plato's Republic. This is like the shadows dancing on the cave wall, right? So there's a lot of Plato in The Giver, I think, but read the whole Republic. It's great. But yeah, I think yeah. So like it's interesting. There are times I'm reading this, I'm like, wait, I shouldn't be agreeing with this, but I'm like, but I am. But I'm like, yeah. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Right. Yeah. Totally. Yeah. Tony, did you have a thought?
I just found him to be more human than anybody else.
Yeah.
In the beginning, I mean, how he related to his sister, his thoughts, or Lowry sharing her thoughts.
Yeah.
She irritated him, and even his friend Asher. I mean, I just thought that was more human than.
Yeah, he had such empathy. Yeah, and this raises the question, like the idea of like the ritual, like obviously that's going to be in all of our books too. But what did you make of Jonas's, like this to this point about he's being more human? What did you make of his eyes?
Yes, and
like,
very rare, right?
Right.
He and the Giver and Fiona. Did Fiona?
Yeah, Fiona. Yeah. Yeah. Any thoughts on the eyes?
Well, she explained it about seeing.
Yeah. How did she say it?
Being able to see into the window of his eyes, or something like that. I can't remember the language.
Tierney.
Windows of the soul.
Yeah, certainly windows of the soul. Absolutely. Yeah, the eyes are the window of the soul. His eyes are kind of pale gray. Everyone else is dark. Right? His eyes are different.
A luminosity.
Yes, enlightenment. Yes, absolutely. Any other thoughts on? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And about Jonah, I agree with everybody that said that he was a little different. What I found in him was a natural curiosity.
Yeah.
That it's just the writer just showed his curiosity, like his obedience and his place in that society. But he's still thinking.
Yes.
And then he is thinking about what he's thinking, and then it's showing a different level than the following the rules and being obedient.
Totally.
Thinking what I'm going to do, what his friend is doing, and he's wondering about everything without noticing.
Yes.
It's a
yes.
And maybe not that that
yeah.
Having there.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. I mentioned wisdom earlier. I think this noticing, observation, curiosity, what is that? Wonder. If I encourage you to read the book of Wisdom, chapter 7, the latter part of Wisdom, chapter 7, to think about those things. I'm mindful of the time. I think there's so much here. We've talked about this curiosity. He's different. Why does he have the eyes that he has? I think you were grasping, Tony, for like the phrase "seeing beyond." Seeing beyond. He has this ability to see beyond what other people can. So, we've just met the Giver. We've just met the Giver, who is played by Jeff Bridges in the film. We're going to watch the film on our last session. So it'll be very interesting to kind of come full circle and see how they adapt the book to the film. So we'll have that in here. Of course, we'll have all of our sessions in here. But seeing beyond, there's like kind of a prophetic gift, something maybe there. So there's a lot. It's very evocative, very, very beautiful. and very interesting. So I don't know, back to that introduction, I can see how people would be so moved by this book. We'll have to figure out if the person was saying Jesus would be ashamed of you is right. I don't know. Jesus liked apocalyptic literature. Last I checked, he read it. But anyway, so we're going to end here. I'm going to say a quick prayer. We're going to just and then if you want to resume and have a hangout time at the Vintage Brewing Company, we're just going to hang out there and have a nice time. So let's pray. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. We give you thanks, O Lord, for this day, for this night together. We thank you for this introductory session. We thank you for these big questions, these deep questions that we're just probing, that, Lord, we're not the first to do it. We thank you for just the people that have come before us who help us to remember where we've come from, who we are, and where we're going. Would you continue to move and work in our hearts, in our minds, in our imaginations by your Holy Spirit? Help us to know your world, to be closer observers of your world, to take wonder in your world, to pursue a heart of wisdom, to see through this literature something that you would have us to see, such that maybe we can write Lois Lowry our story. And so would you just continue to move and work by your Holy Spirit in our hearts? Would you help us to imagine as Christians, as Catholics, more of how to assimilate all that is true and good and beautiful from our literature in this book study this summer. We pray this through Christ our Lord. Amen. In the name of the Father, and Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Have a great evening. Yeah. Thank you for coming. See you next week. We'll finish The Giver. And then we'll get into C.S. Lewis 2 weeks from now.